So League of Legends is infamous for its horrible community. Not everyone who plays the game is a terrible person, of course. In fact, League's anti-toxicity team makes the claim that 80% of abusive behavior comes from normal, non-terrible people. Riot Games has done so much over the years in the name of mitigating the miasmic hate that constantly wafts from their player base, but one thing they haven't seemed to have tried is changing how their game works. I contend that there are things about the gameplay itself that promote awful behavior. Inexperienced allies are to be feared and mistrusted, becoming experienced is an absurdly long and arduous journey, and the general gameplay is riddled with complicated mechanics, many of which are frustrating and disempowering. So, let's next ask, why? The mechanics don't have to be like this. Like, for instance, having some kind of penalty when you die, and some reward for scoring a kill are important, but getting taken out of the game for like 40 seconds is pretty infuriating, so maybe just do something else. If players respawn instantly, what other penalty could balance that out? Loss of experience? Losing some gold? Dying already does those things indirectly because you can't earn gold or experience while dead. Maybe it could be something weirder, like maybe dying deals some damage to one of your nearby structures, or like scoring a kill spawns an extra couple of minions for your next wave. Well, no, that would give the enemy more opportunity to get gold. But I mean, that could help reduce snowballs, since skilled players could take advantage of extra minions to help bounce back. Unless you get rid of lasted gold bonus, which is also a thing you should do, so maybe— Fuck, I don't know. Riot, you're the bloody game designer. Fucking design something. Something that's not so fucking annoying. If late game is what people want, get rid of the early game. If people mistrust their teammates, make it harder for a bad player to sink the team. If learning to play well takes a crazy long time, cut out a bunch of the crap that makes it overcomplicated. I'm going to make a habit of providing constructive advice about stuff whatever it is I'm discussing could do better, but I didn't get very far coming up with suggestions for League. Like that stuff I said before, that's it. That's all I've got. The way to prune the frustrating punishment out of a game is to streamline the mechanics to only include what supports the core gameplay, to get rid of the chaff and clutter that doesn't improve the intended experience. But then I realized, while idly listening to the Game Grumps discussing the failings of Sonic and the Black Knight, I don't have a concrete idea of what the intended experience of League of Legends is.
Why do you think Sonic doesn't receive that same treatment?
Because he sucks.
No, Aaron.
Because they don't know what to do with him.
That's more of a realistic answer.
Because the first game they made wasn't even that great. And the whole thing is, oh, he runs fast. But running fast is not a good game mechanic.
Right.
There needs to be more than that. Sonic is about running fast. And sometimes he jumps on stuff, but other times he dashes at stuff. And sometimes he has a sword, I guess. And, yeah, I guess it's about getting to the end and collecting rings, maybe?
Yeah, I guess.
But it's not really about collecting rings.
Aaron is not entirely correct here, as usual. Sonic games were about going fast, not running fast. I don't blame him for being a bit confused about that, of course, because the games themselves are confused about that. The Sonic franchise has had a serious identity crisis since Sonic Adventure, and it got much worse with Sonic 2006. In the early games, Sonic was about speed, but you didn't get to go fast by just pushing a button. You used physics to achieve speed, like by rolling down slopes and ramps to gain momentum. You know, rolling, because he's a hedgehog. Many of the 3D Sonic games are so terrible in large part because they tried to borrow the gameplay elements from the 2D games, like stages built like obstacle courses and a bouncing-based physics engine, while changing the identity to be about always running fast instead of trying to go fast. People have been liking the later games more because they've finally gotten better at actually being about always running fast, with elements like stages being built like racetracks, more heavily structured set pieces, and lower difficulty so that flow can be maintained without a lot of skill. I plan to make a whole video ranting about Sonic at some point in the future if I survive long enough, but my point is, most of the 3D Sonic games, especially the earlier ones, are full of mechanics that were built with the wrong experience in mind, because they came from an earlier game. The designers changed the core without changing everything else to fit. I bring this up because I happen to know that League of Legends is exactly the same. Fighting heroes, destroying towers, killing minions, killing monsters, getting gold, getting items, leveling up, laning, jungling, ganking, having late game max level 5 versus 5 team fights straight down the middle. What even is the core here? Which of these things is in service to what? Is it a game about your team fighting the enemy team, and buildings are there to be strategic locations? Then why have such a large map that forces teams to split up? Is it a game about destroying the enemy building buildings, and the enemy heroes are there to make that objective more of a challenge, then why are so many heroes built to fight only other heroes? Some are built to go jungling. Why is there a jungle? The core of League of Legends is not any of these, because it is all of these. The core experience of League of Legends is war. You build up your forces, you manage your resources, and you use strategy to destroy the enemy any way you can. One might think, wait, what forces? I only have this one dude. True, you don't really have much of an army in League, but you did, back in the game that it stole its core from, Warcraft III. For you youngins with your iBooks and your face tweets who don't know your history, Warcraft III was a real-time strategy game back from the old ancient days of 2002. It was the third game in the Warcraft franchise, one of the pioneers of the real-time strategy genre. It also had an expansion called Frozen Throne, and after that I think it spun off into some other shitty game nobody cares about. In Warcraft III, like most RTSs, you build a base and gather resources so you can train up an army, and you use your army to expand and fight enemy armies, and win by destroying the enemy's base. It also introduced a new feature. You could get up to 3 powerful hero units. Heroes were to be the centerpieces of your forces, and unlike regular units, gradually gained more power as the game went on, sort of adding a little bit of RPG into the mix. A standout feature of Warcraft III that set it apart was the World Editor, a companion program that let you very easily create your own maps, and it was boasted that the single-player story campaign of the main game was made entirely using that World Editor, or at least put together using the World Editor, because obviously the editor wasn't used to record the voice lines or rig the models or paint the textures, but anyway. For the time, the World Editor was very powerful, and could be used to not just make maps to fight random matches in, like the Warcraft II editor had been, but actually script events and make custom units and spells and items and such. You could make whole campaigns with objectives and stories, and even your own cutscenes. And it was simple enough to learn and use that it spawned a vibrant map-making community that actually continues to this day. Perhaps the most famous custom map to come out of this era was one called Defense of the Ancients, most often abbreviated as Dota. In it, players only had one hero instead of an army and a base, and battled down 3 lanes to destroy the enemy team's Ancient, turning Warcraft III into a sort of third-person action game instead of strategy, borrowing elements from an even earlier custom map called Aeon of Strife, which had been made in Blizzard's even earlier RTS, StarCraft. Yeah, before we called them MOBAs, we called them AOSs. The public nature of War 3 custom games, you have to download them to play them and you can use the World Editor to open any map you download, led to a variety of spin-offs as other map makers made their own versions, adding in their own heroes and new items or whatever. After a while, some people compiled a bunch of the most popular versions and merged them together, creating Dota All-Stars, which even today continues to hang around on Warcraft servers. Somehow. Does this lady really have 2 passive abilities? What the fuck kind of design? In 2004, a guy named Steve Feek took over the development of All-Stars, and he managed it for about a year, after which he left the project in the hands of a guy called IceFrog, who would later join up with Valve and make Dota 2, which also sucks. Steve went on to partner with a pair of college roommates named Brandon Beck and Mark Merrill, and together, in 2006, they co-founded a little game development company and released their first game 3 years later. That company was Riot Games, and that game was League of Legends. Almost everything in League comes from Warcraft 3, a game from a different genre. The mechanics don't fit together to create a cohesive core experience because they're built for the wrong game. The whole genre has this problem. Think about it for a second. What even is a MOBA? Well, it's got multiplayer online in there. Junk words, meaningless. They convey about as much as character action game. What the dick is a character action game, you goddamn— Okay, so we drop those 2 letters and we're left with Battle Arena. I guess a MOBA is about battling in an arena? Except it's not. This isn't an arena, it's a battlefield. This is an arena. Summoner's Rift, like an RTS map, is more like a small-scale facsimile of a war, with like fronts and home bases and supply lines and shit, sorta. What is the primary loop? I think there are like 3 or 4 primary loops. MOBAs are cobbled together shambles of RTS, RPG, and maybe some fighting game thrown in. This one doesn't have items, but it's still a MOBA. This one doesn't have mobs, it's still a MOBA. This one doesn't play like a strategy game, it's still a MOBA. It's like the only thing that really qualifies something as being part of this genre as ripping off Defense of the Ancients. And League of Legends takes the crown there. Heroes, each with 4 abilities, 3 regular ones and 1 strong one called an ultimate, which is abilities unlocked at level 6, items that grant passive bonuses or can be used to cast abilities or both, heroes having 6 item slots, neutral monsters, defensive structures, a giant primary base building, top-down camera, last hit gold bonus. All of these things are ported straight from Dota, which only had them because it was a custom scenario made in Warcraft 3's engine. The gigantic square map is a holdover too. Map makers love to make really big maps because bigger be better, and we don't want empty space in between the 3 paths we actually need, so we'll fill up the rest with garbage like creeps and jungle. I recognize that kind of thinking as a convention of the Warcraft 3 map-making community, because I was and continue to be a part of it. I had to force myself to stop working on Warcraft maps so I could get this video done. Just stop. It'll never be fun. No one will ever want to play it with you. Even the way League is controlled. You right-click to order your hero around because that's how an RTS did it. Moving and attacking are both done with right-click. In an RTS, this is because you need left-click to select which units you're controlling at the moment. League isn't an RTS, though. It's more like a third-person action RPG. I can't tell you how many times I tried to move somewhere, but accidentally clicked on an enemy and started attacking when I meant to run away. Yes, you can get better at this with practice, but my point is that League didn't need to use this control scheme. It would have been better served by movement controls bound to directions like WASD or the arrow keys, while using the mouse to aim and attack. Like in Alien Swarm, or like Bastion. Oh, Bastion is such a great game. Ah, god damn it, crocodiles! Remember when I asked why there's an early game at all when the hero fighting seems to be what people are here for? An early game that focuses on building up your strength before the big fighting begins? It's there because that's how RTS games start, and they have snowballs too. But RTS games usually build around this with rushing and rush defense and strategies and whatnot, and it's all very complicated. And most importantly, if a snowball becomes obvious enough, one side will say GG and leave, and they won't be punished for it. I railed against last hit gold bonus a while ago, and the reason I gave it special attention is because it exemplifies the haphazardness with which these elements were thrown together by Riot. Last hit gold bonus was an emergent thing back in Dota. It wasn't built in on purpose. See, in Warcraft 3, in addition to some experience and an item or two for your hero, creeps gave you a little bit of gold when you killed them, to further incentivize getting your hero and a small force out and about early on to stretch their legs and explore your surroundings a bit before trying to fight the enemy. The game picked which player to give the gold to by checking who owned the unit that landed the killing blow, just like League does. But back then, this almost never really mattered. Whether your Grunt or your Blade Master killed it, both units were still in your army under your control because it was an RTS. Also, only neutral creeps dropped gold, not enemy player units. Fighting over last hit gold was just never really a thing. But in Dota, and other maps like it, the hero is your only unit, and these other little guys are owned by a separate computer-controlled player. As a result, getting the last hit with your hero became a major part of gameplay all of a sudden, because otherwise the gold goes to the computer, not you. Was this in service to the experience of Dota? Not really. It was a function of the engine, not a design choice, and Dota's creators didn't bother to change it, because changing it would have been a huge headache. Did Riot change it? Their game wasn't made in World Editor. They could have, but they didn't. It's just there because that's how things were before. This is like not even a lack of work ethic type of lazy. They built their own engine. I don't know how the process actually works, but I assume they didn't just leave in some code from a previous version or whatever. They made last hit gold bonus from scratch. That's laziness in thought. That's like zero creativity. It didn't even occur to them to design the game differently from what came before. I can't properly identify the core gameplay of League of Legends because Riot Games never bothered to think of one. Not that all of it came from Warcraft 3 specifically. All the heroes and items are more from the RPG side of games, a side which Warcraft 3 only casually dipped its feet into. The thing is, RPG elements with a single hero is a great form of player expression, and League didn't need this much of that any more than it needed last hit gold or click to move controls. They just saw them in Warcraft and went, ooh, let's do that too, but ours will be bigger and better. For one thing, each of the 4 races in Warcraft 3 had a total of 4 heroes to choose from, or rather 12 when you count the 8 mercenary heroes anyone could hire from the tavern. 12, as opposed to the previously mentioned 150 in League. Multiple characters and builds are a way to allow players to play how they want to, but putting so much focus on that variety is completely at odds with putting the game into such a competitive scene. When you're on a team that's trying to win, your build being optimized to counter your enemies and complement your allies matters far more than whether or not it's cool or fun. For the people who want to win, dumb casuals dicking around making suboptimal builds only get in the way, and will probably end up feeding. And for the people having fun with a goofy or unorthodox playstyle, the competitive assholes keep ruining their good time and then insult faulting them for it. Player expression suits games with a different audience than competitive PvP. Not every gamer plays a game for the same kind of experience. League tries to cater to multiple types of player without realizing they get in each other's way. World of Warcraft, another game that tries for a very wide audience, handily solved this schism in the player base by having the PvP elements be optional, with distinct PvP and PvE servers, and giving players the option of turning a PvP flag on or off. I think it might be different now. Blizzard has a habit of fucking up their perfectly functional stuff. Careful about killing the specialist class, Blizzard. They have a necromancer. Most other competitive games resolve the schism by just focusing on a narrower audience, and not having any RPG mechanics at all. Kind of obvious, really. Which brings us back to what could be done to fix all the stuff I've been complaining about. These things don't fit together well, because they were all grandfathered in from previous games that worked very differently. What can they do now? I hate to say it, but hell if I know. I usually have an array of big messy idea buckets filled with suggestions. Suggestions no one will ever care about. But in this case, they'd have to figure it out for themselves. It feels like it's too late to do anything. Like you'd had to have fixed this issue at the start, like Heroes of the Storm did. They removed items completely from the get-go, and made builds simple and less divergent from a main role for each hero. Like you can build the Butcher to be particularly good at chasing down fleeing enemies, or better at staying alive while he kills someone, or good at killing all the people at once, but no matter what, his job is always going to be frontline heavy damage dealing, because he's always going to be a vicious murder machine, as opposed to in League, where I can make Blitzcrank a similarly horrifying face-crumping monster when they think he's supposed to be a tank, just because I bought the big hammer thing instead of the fancy shirt. I bet I could make one of those scrawny little assassins an unkillable juggernaut if I gave them the fancy shirts instead of the big hammers. I'm not actually gonna bother trying though, because that sounds really, really boring. Getting rid of items and streamlining build options is what I would have done if I were making a MOBA, but Riot is kind of stuck. So much of League is built on these old ways, and it's been that way since the beginning. They couldn't possibly clean the muck out now, lest their well-established and million-strong fanbase start some kind of armed uprising. They already throw a hissy fit whenever a major balance patch is released. I guess my only advice for Riot to fix all of this hate built into the system would be like, first thing, figure out what the hell they want their game to actually be. Could they actually do it though? Could they really get away with pruning the Warcraft III grime out of their game after this long? Assuming they find one, could they pull off condensing the gameplay to a more streamlined core experience? Well, I mean, I guess they could try. They don't seem to be doing much else with their time. Oh, wait a minute, it looks like they were working on all this other shit. No, stop, what is all this? Go back and fix the other thing first, you stupid! I'm starting to feel like I may not actually hate this game anymore. The boiling rancor it used to stir in me has gradually cooled and solidified into pity. Maybe it's just my medication mellowing me out, but it feels like a game nobody loved. Something nobody really wanted to make. Like they just threw it together for a job and kept going because it was a steady source of income. Especially when they could scam people every week with new heroes who were flashy and overpowered, so everyone had to buy them with real money right away before nerfing them into the ground a week later just in time for the new one to roll out. At least they don't do that anymore, I think. Where is the passion in this game? Is it all this terrible writing? God, I hope not. Everything in League feels plastic to me, bland and soulless, just like Overwatch. Lots of variety, but all of it feels the same. This lady does lots of damage at range with basic attacks and can slow people down. This lady also does that. And this one. And this one. And this one. And this one. Oh, wait a minute, this one doesn't have a slow. Oh, but she does have a stun. I can't care about any of these dickheads because none of them feel at all human or complete, like finished, fleshed out ideas. All their descriptions just drone a bit about how tough their backstory is and how much of a badass they are and woe betide any who stand in their path or some shit. All they ever talk about is how much ass they kick and how beneath them everybody else is. They're like the text on the back of a Transformers action figure box or something. Whoa, wait. Oh shit, that's awesome. I take it back, that's like more interesting than League of Legends in its entirety. Yeah, that's more what I was thinking of. Come on, League, fire the Sharkpoon! I wouldn't mind that so much, I guess, if they were making like a fighting game or something. But if they were supposed to be simple, larger-than-life archetypes standing up on their designs alone, what's with all this lore? Was there heart in the creation of even one of these jerks? Look at this bitch. Totally not Poison Ivy. The seeds thing is kinda neat as a mechanic. Maybe. Never actually played with her. But Zyra feels like she exists because someone had a deadline to meet. Not because some designers sat around a table and one of them said, "Hey, you know what would be cool? Or better yet, hey, you know what would be an interesting part of this world to explore? This is all just my personal opinion on the world building and character design, and I said I'd try to limit how much I talk about that. But seriously, does anybody actually care about any of this? I mean, I know some people do, but some people still care about Avatar, so I'm talking about like the general population, addressing the vast majority of the player base here. Do you care about this junk? Like this war between Demacia and... fuck, what was the other one? Noxus, that was it. What's it all here for? Who is spending this much time writing this stuff, and why? It certainly doesn't contribute to the actual game in any way. Could this really be the thing somebody on the team actually cares about? That'd be just sad considering the quality of the world they built, or lack thereof, and all these hollow, petty douchebags they populated it with, all just broad archetypes and old fantasy cliches, or cooler ideas taken from somewhere else, with lines of inspiration so obvious Helen Keller could follow them, and then she'd be like, "Oh, you totally ripped off that assassin lady from Kingsman, you lazy gits." Yeah, you tell him, Miss Keller, you're the real champion here. Some heroes seem at least vaguely creative in concept or in mechanics, but not many. And I'm not going to take 2 hours to sift through their dialogue to see if one or two of them happen to actually have something interesting to say, not after experiencing Katarina running her dumbass mouth. Funny story, this literally happened to me one time. Hey, the next hero was announced, he's a vampire. Is his name Vlad? Yes. And it was. Poor Vlad the generic vampire and his pants that make him look like a clown. They didn't put much work into designing you, did they? Didn't put much work into any of these guys before they were made, nor after from the looks of it. Look at these descriptions. They're missing a lot of important information, like mana cost or cooldown or damage numbers, or any numbers really. Wait, this one does. What? But not all the numbers. These ones have passive and active separately, but this one doesn't. These passives have video demonstrations, but these ones don't. I guess it would be a pretty serious pain in the ass to standardize all of these. Maybe they should have thought of that before making over 700 abilities to write descriptions for. Well, I mean, it doesn't matter all that much. I mean, who would ever need to read descriptions of these abilities of all these heroes like they were trying to learn how they work, and I was going to make a joke here, but now it's just made me sad because it's true. This makes the learning curve problem even worse. Look at this shit, it doesn't tell you that Blitzcrank's first and fourth ability benefit from ability power, but his second and third don't at all, and vice versa, for his second and third benefiting a lot from attack damage, but his first and fourth don't. That would have been really useful to know if one were, for instance, thinking about trying out Blitzcrank, or trying to see what the enemy was up to by looking at what items they're carrying. And here, it doesn't say that Mordekaiser's Siphon has a really short cooldown when that's really important information. Hang on, it says it absorbs shield for every unit hit, but all his abilities do that. That's like his thing. Siphon grants bonus shield for hitting heroes. What the fuck? Wait, the swirly scrap one's description doesn't even mention that using that ability can heal him and the person he cast it on, but that... Oh my god, what is even the point of this page? Wait a minute, the online wiki does have all of the... So you did do the work already, then why doesn't the... What the fuck is that? Object? And the active is on the wrong line there? How are bonus experience earned 0? So this must have been copied from the in-game thing, but you didn't edit. Did one person do all of this in a weekend and didn't proofread anything? Did nobody ever look back on... Where's that recent asshole? Silas or whatever. What's his page look like? What is this? When you made this page, when you released this guy, nobody thought to... This is the official website, right? This isn't like a shitty fan wiki or... Oh no, wait, this is the fan wiki. Whoa! Whoa, look at all this. Man, it's even got like percents and everything. Just look at all this useful information. Hey Riot, look at all of this work that other people are doing for you. Their company employs like 2,500 people. What are they doing all day? Polishing the tits on the new Akali skin? And I mentioned that you have a dedicated team tasked with combating abusive behavior. Does that team include literally everyone? Quick aside, it seems Morty went through some kind of redesign while I was in the process of making this video, and I am sure that when they finished this redesign, they also went and updated his wiki page. Why don't we have a look? Quick shout out to the people who run the League of Legends fan wiki. You guys have your shit together. These clods, on the other hand, why are these repeat items so poorly organized? Why does this guy have an animation for teleporting back to base, but this guy doesn't? Why does the update thing load the launcher just so it can tell me to update? Why doesn't it just do the update when it detects one? What's with the lines the bots say at the beginning of a match? Tibbers is Annie's pet, not yours. So wait, you don't have time to record stuff for every passive, but you do have time to record Cobra Queen slithering around in a little circle? That doesn't even demonstrate her speed increasing with their level like it says in the thing. Jesus, Ash, that's hardcore. The Earth the Manatee skin is on here twice. This game's been out for 10 years. I said I wouldn't rag on the stuff that just sucks. I wasn't gonna rant about it. I really tried, I swear. But I just ran into all this shit while doing basic research and, like, I only started recording footage of this game in 2019. Even if any of this stuff has been fixed now, it took them 10 years to do it. Shit like this should have been fixed in beta. After an entire decade, this mess is what they've got. Heroes of the Storm was in better shape on day one than this game is now. Blizzard is a bigger company, but company size couldn't possibly be preventing this kind of polish from being done. You don't need a giant trained team to fix all this. Like, okay, I freely admit I have no goddamn idea what the internal workings of the industry are like, but Blizzard has less than twice the number of employees as Riot Games, and they make an update like 5 different franchises. Riot, this is like the only game you have. Well, I originally wrote that, but apparently they made all this other junk. Maybe that's what they were doing this whole time instead of making League of Legends not a giant human misery manufacturing engine in service to the Chaos Gods. Maybe they're abandoning this one and starting over. I would be totally down with that, but as it is, I don't know which possibility is more depressing, that they didn't care, or they did, and this is the best they could do. Has all their creative energy been sapped trying to quell their toxic community? That'd be pretty fucking tragic, but I think it's more likely that they just didn't have any creative energy to begin with. Maybe that just comes with the territory of your game being a glorified Warcraft III custom scenario. After days of research and putting myself through this game again in preparation for the video, I honestly couldn't tell you where the designers are putting their effort. But it's clearly not here. Why the fuck did I make all this? Was it because I'm an arrogant prick who wants to shout my opinions at others? Was it because Heroes of the Storm is a vastly superior game and I'm angry that it seems to be doing worse, even though I don't really like Heroes of the Storm either and Blizzard sucks? Was it for therapeutic reasons because I have a need to scream this anguish into the void to get it off my chest? Was it because I'm hoping to at some point make videos professionally because I desperately need money so I can finally have worth as a human being? Was it because I gave up on my dreams of ever being able to create stories or art that inspire people, so I've fallen back on analysis and criticism because all I have left inside me is spite and hatred? Yes, 100%, it is all of these things. But underneath all that bullshit, I actually have a simpler reason. Bullying is bad. It's bad, right? Being a dick to other people is bad. The world would be better if fewer people said things like this. It would be a better place if fewer people thought like this. A toxic atmosphere is a bad thing, and I believe games shouldn't have them. This medium has so much potential, and so often I see it squandered for stupid reasons. Good games matter to me. Good stories matter to me. Good experiences matter to me. I really don't have enough of them these days. Toxicity in video games is something that's very easy to brush off. Multiple elements of this problem seem trivial. People calling each other mean things seems trivial. Video games themselves seem trivial to a lot of people. But it is more than that. I don't know if there's really anything quite like online abuse that a non-gamer could relate to. Maybe they think because it's non-physical and there's little direct danger, it's not actually harm. More probably, it's just another symptom of a terrible culture of shitheads that still hasn't accepted psychological well-being as important because it's too busy promoting gun violence and rape in the name of asserting manliness. Abuse in games is serious. Not every time, but it's not never. Video games aren't just a kid playing with a toy. They're a person socializing and engaging with a community with a shared hobby. Awful behavior like this takes that good experience and poisons it. It takes away the safety and comfort. And some people really need that comfort and community because they don't get much of it on the outside. If the atmosphere is poisonous enough for long enough, some of the people breathing it start to feel like maybe being part of a community isn't a symbiotic relationship. Maybe it's a parasitic one. Think again about that statistic I dropped back at the beginning. 80% of abusive behavior in their game, they claimed, came from people who were normally just fine. What kind of game is this that normally just fine people playing it dip this low often enough that it gives the whole game this bad a reputation? Toxicity is bad because it makes people worse. I know, because it made me worse. I stopped playing League of Legends years ago, partly because I wasn't having fun, but primarily it was because I realized that it was making me a worse person, and it was actively damaging the friendships I had at the time. I would open up the game thinking I was going to have an enjoyable team-oriented experience, but I'd soon just get stressed out, even if we were winning, frustrated at the enemy team for outplaying us, at myself for my mistakes, or at my friends for theirs. I'm not certain if I ever went so far as to yell at or insult anyone. I don't remember doing so. We played on Twisted Treeline, didn't we? Yeah, that's right. Didn't want to do Summoner's Rift because there were 6 of us. Jesus fuck, I can't believe there was a time when there were a whole 5 people who were willing to play a game with me all at once. I can't even remember who was there anymore. But I do remember feeling like it was at least in part their fault that I wasn't having a good time. That thought was the first step on a long, dark road that I only narrowly avoided. Being submerged in that stress for such long periods at a time was having an effect on me, and it got so bad that I noticed it and had to stop myself before it got any worse. I wonder how many people suffer the same way but don't stop themselves. How many people just keep playing? That's why this matters to me, because I love video games, and because lazy design like this can make the thing I love do actual harm to people, not just make the game less fun, because idiotic moral guardian type losers have been trying to erode my hobby for decades by saying it can make kids more violent, and I hate that even though those deluded fear-mongering morons have absolutely no understanding of or interest in the subject matter they are attacking, I have to, in the interests of intellectual honesty, admit that on occasion their assertion can be right. Just like any other media or art form, video games can be bad for us. I didn't spend a whole section bitching about stupid crap and lack of polish just because I felt like it. I mean, I did feel like it, cause fuck this game. I did it to help illustrate the apparent lack of effort and thought that Riot put into their product. I get a very strong sense that they don't care, and they haven't since the start. That lack of polish should be coming back to bite them, because it's constantly biting the player base, and those around them. That guy I offhandedly mentioned who beat his girlfriend during a live stream? That guy was Vasilii, don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, a professional League of Legends player from the 2014 championship season. And he's not the only professional League of Legends player to act like this. I'm not saying this is the kind of behavior Riot promotes and rewards, or League of Legends makes people become abusive, but you can't tell me that these guys don't represent something within the League community. At least some portion of the people who play this game a lot, enough to get this good enough to become professional championship players, are like this. At least they get suspended for it sometimes. And Vasilii was arrested. That's nice, fuck that guy. And I hope his then girlfriend is alright. She said he didn't actually beat her, but I mean, abuse victims have been known to defend their abusers, so I don't know. But either way, verbal abuse is still abuse by itself, even if he hadn't also violently thrown the furniture around. You can do better than this, shithead Riot. And to be clear, I'm not blaming the game for his domestic violence or anything. It wasn't League's fault this asshat was a violent douchebag, but it wasn't good for him either. The creators of the game can't stop all abusive behavior, but they can at least put in the effort to make sure they aren't making it worse by accident. And I do believe it really was by accident. Like I said, it's laziness, not hate. I mean, I think so anyway. I don't know what goes on in that place. I'll just sum up by paraphrasing one of my YouTube idols, a Mr. Harry B. Guy. I'm not saying that Riot Games is incompetent and gave no thought to how their mechanics and design choices would affect the experience of their players, but it certainly looks exactly like that. I'm sure Riot Games isn't all bad, of course. I heard they did some event at a convention or something where they had an all-girls side room designed to help women who want to enter the industry. That's cool, though rings a bit insincere somehow. It did at least make some very shitty people extremely angry, so that's awesome. Nice one, Riot. In fact, you probably... Oh. Oh my fucking god. That panel event was in response to the Kotaku piece, wasn't it? But then the lawsuit came afterwards, and then the walkout and this lawsuit thing. Well, never fucking mind, I guess. God damn it, Riot. Fuck you and fuck this piece of shit you built. God, I hate this game. I submit to you, League of Legends is bad and is bad for us. Instead of helping to strengthen friendships with cooperation, it is just as likely to erode them with anxiety and mistrust because of its accidental toxicity. Die Heroes of the Storm instead, or whatever. Thanks for watching, all you 80% nice people. Like and share and all that jazz. Don't forget to beat the shit out of that subscribe button and molest that bell. If you'd like to prove to me that you weren't listening by reiterating League is just fine if you play it with friends at rank 30 instead of coming up with a logical argument, feel free to leave a comment, and I will not read it.